What's happening, crew? We're back in Bentonville. Been on a whirlwind tour, it seems, traveling all over the country for Ride Series clinics, and one of the most important elements of the Ride Series MTB skills clinics is turning. So today, we're gonna break down the basics of turning. And I thought about this. I thought, you know, there's a lot of new riders the last 2 years with COVID, which is amazing. And all of those new riders could make use of some turning technique, but so can you longtime riders. So we're here at a new zone that I've been calling G6, but my wife said don't call it that, but I'm still gonna call it that. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna use an actual uphill portion, very simple, constant radius turn that will help us break down the musts when it comes to turning. So I'm ready. Are you ready? I think you are. I'm confident you are. All right, we're ready to talk about step number one when it comes to turning. And we're not even on the trail yet. We're here talking about the bike and the bike setup. So it just so happens, this is the first day on my all new specialized Stumpjumper EVO. And I dig this bike, but with this bike, one thing that's pretty specific is it's an S3. So a lot of people said, dude, I think you're probably an S4. I rode an S4 and I rode an S3. And what I found was I could turn the S3 better. So an S4, it would probably give me more high speed stability, but what I found was longer wheelbase, slacker head tube, I didn't have enough weight forward on the bike. So I went with a smaller bike, shorter reach, 50 mil stem, drop the stem down a little bit, and now I have enough weight over the front of the bike to get it to turn. So that's the first thing you need to think about. If you're turning and you're washing out a lot, could be a couple different reasons. One of them could be you don't have enough weight on the front of the bike. So that's the first thing you need to think about. All right, kids, next thing we're gonna talk about is tires. Now, Harry Hogg, he really knows tires, and he taught cold trickle a lot. Now, in this situation, these Specialized Butcher Grid, pretty amazing tire. And Specialized, this is how they make these tires. Check it out. Rolling knobs in the center, turning knobs on the outside. So it only stands to reason. If you don't get the bike leaned over enough to get those turning knobs to bite, you're not being effective. Okay, we're on to, I think, step 3, and we haven't even gotten on the trail yet. So step 3, we need to think about body position. So I'm gonna sound like a broken record because I've said this over and over and over and over again. The most important thing that you can think about when you're on the bike, I don't care what you're doing, is being over the bottom bracket. So you have to have your weight centered. If you're over the bottom bracket, everything else can work out. Now, in this particular scenario, we talked about having to get the bike leaned over so the side knobs bite. So if I get the bike leaned over with the side knobs biting, but I stay right here, well, what's the problem with that? The problem is my mass is over here. I need to move my mass over. How do I do that? Well, like Shakira said, hips don't lie. So what I do is I slide my big old hips on over. So now I have the bike leaned over, I have all my weight in line right here, and it's on those turning knobs. So the way I'm maximizing that is with my inside pedal up and my outside pedal down. So now this accomplishes a couple of things. I can really put that weight on the outside pedal, therefore drive those knobbies down into the ground, and I can think about dropping that heel down as a rudder. But what's even better is this inside pedal's up. It's not gonna strike anything, and my weight is off it. So if I come through this turn, I get a little loose, and we know loose is fast. If I get loose, I might wanna take that foot off. Now I have no weight, so I can take it right off. If my pedals are level, I take that foot off, well, bam, outside falls down. Let's get it there to start, kids. All right, so what are we doing here? We're looking at 3 different cones, and we're looking at 3 different cones because these correspond to timing in a turn. So at this point, we're coming in, our eyes are up, we're looking through the turn. What we're doing is we're trying to figure out where we need to enter this turn. So we got the green cone, we got the orange cone, we got the blue cone. So if we had to break these down, how they correspond to time, this right here in the center, this is on time. And this is the well-worn line that you see all over the place. This is what most people take. That over there, don't even want to worry about that because that's late. And when you're late, you're fired. This right here is where we want to be. So if we're looking at this, this is a left-hand turn. It's a constant radius left-hand turn. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna come in way out here because this is simple geometry. What we wanna do is we want to come in as wide as possible to try to open this turn up. So if I come in on the far outside, I give myself a better angle. Now, once I do that, I don't want to turn in too early. I want to come in, I want to look through the turn and stay set up on the outside as I enter. What is this going to look like? Well, what it's going to look like is as I'm coming in, again, my eyes are up, I'm going to be over here on the right side of the trail. I'm going to come in nice and tall, centered over the bike. And as I come in, I'm going to be out here on the right side, and I'm going to be eyeing up where I want my apex to be. So remember, the apex, where you stop going into the turn and you start coming out. So as I come in, I want to wait. I want to stay out here until I see where I want to go, and then I start to come down. And what I'm looking to do is come in here, soften the angle. I don't want it to be very abrupt. I want to be smooth with my inputs. And when I come in, I want to lean the bike. And when I'm doing this, this is my best advice to you. When you're in this situation and you're coming over, you want to think about leaning the bike and guiding it with your inside hand and counterweighting with your outside foot. What we tell people at the Ride Series is think of those 2 points of contact, inside hand, outside foot. And as I'm doing this, I want to make sure I get my hips out away from the bike, so I'm putting weight down into the trail, but I also want to think about fore and aft. I don't want to get back here. I don't want to get in the back seat. You don't drive your car from the back seat. You don't ride your bike in the back seat, but I also don't want to steer. I want you to correlate steering to slow speeds. Here, turning, cornering, this is a product of leaning the bike. So as you come in, slowly feed in with that inside hand and modulate with that outside. And what you want to do is you want to think about everything coming down this way. So let me kind of paint a contrast for you. If I'm coming in making a left-hand turn, look at this. I'm leaning, right? I'm leaning the bike. But the problem is, look at my right shoulder. My right shoulder is pointed this way. If I get my right shoulder here, I can get the bike that much lower. So think about feeding this in as you go through the turn. If you think about it this way, pretend somebody's graphing your ride. They're graphing you as you go through the turn. What you want is for it to be waves, okay? We don't want these spikes. So you want the input to be very subtle. You don't want your body moving all over the place. That's why you want to come in, straight line brake. Get your braking done. Ease off the brakes, into the turn, out of the turn. Look to success. All right, I come in as I approach, straight line braking, lean the bike, guide with the inside hand, weight on the outside foot. So we want to point out something that we'll say is a little bit higher level, and it has to do with foot position. So we talked about having the inside pedal up and the outside pedal down, and that's so you can put your weight on the outside pedal. Now, if you're feeling pretty comfortable with everything that we've talked about, what you can think about doing is, as you come into this turn, and again, there's an apex. The apex is where you stop going in and you start coming out. If you can time that pedal movement where the pedal drops to the outside right as you get to the apex, that input will give you that output out of the turn. Now, here's where it gets even better. If you take your big old hips like me and drop them down in concert with that, foot moving down to the outside, you bring in more weight, you load more pressure into the trail, into the turn. So for that reaction, physics tells us there'll be an equal and opposite reaction, which will propel you into the next turn. All right, at this point, we've broken down a decent amount of the technique. Now we want to dive into some of the particulars. So, Brock's got a great angle of this right here, because when I'm coming through the turn, that perspective you have, I want you to think about that when you're on your bike. So when you're coming through the turn, pretend you're looking at yourself from the side, how tall are you? So what you want to think about is, center of gravity is center of gravity. If you can get your center of gravity a little bit lower, usually that's better. And if you can drop it down as you come into the turn, you can use that to your advantage, like I just showed you. But now I want to break this down because everybody's going to be different. I don't expect anybody out there to look like me. I am me. Hopefully nobody else out there looks like me. You need to look like you doing this the best you can. So when you think about, as you're coming through the turn, if you have this big, tall, proud chest, you can only lean the bike so far. If you get down here and actually get your hips out, you can lean the bike even more. See that? So it's pretty important to think about that. If you're tall and skittish, or you're doing this thing, like I said earlier, where you're going like this, I'm leaning the bike, but look at my shoulder. I'm making a left-hand turn, but my shoulder's pointed here. start to get that shoulder this way, start to bring the torso this way. And it's difficult usually for taller athletes. If you're a taller person, this is gonna be a little tough because you're thinking, man, I don't wanna put all my mass down there into the trail. Don't worry about it. The more you guide the bike with the inside hand, the more you focus on those hips and glutes out here on this outside foot. And what's really cool is when you start to get comfortable with this, and if it's a long sweeping turn, you can start to really focus on that heel and really drive that heel down like a rudder and get a little bit more grip. Okay, so I'm gonna direct this one at some of those newer riders or some of those more skittish riders. So I talked about leaning the bike and how you have to bring the torso down lower and create all this traction. That's a tough thing to do when you're hardly moving. So you need to think about physics and gravity. So some of you new riders out there, I know you're scared. You wanna balance that. What you wanna do is you wanna find a comfortable place. I suggest grass field. You can go to Academy or something and buy some of those cones and throw those cones down and find a place that you're comfortable. This spot is pretty cool for this. This is here in Bentonville, it's a new zone. I thought it was called G6. I don't know what the hell it's called now, but it's on A Street. They're building a castle. Don't worry, you'll find it. Find places like this to practice, find a controlled environment and slowly bring up that speed. There's almost like a, I don't know, like an equalization, like a point, a threshold that you'll reach with speed where everything will fall into place. It'll be easier. You don't want to go over that. Remember, speed is a byproduct of good technique, and turning is something that takes a long time. All right, kids, there you go. Turns broken down pretty simply. Now, turns, we can get really, really in depth. We can talk about a lot of different things, and we'll do that in future videos. But what we wanted to do was break it down pretty simply, especially for you newer riders, and maybe a little brush up for some of you who've been in the game for a while. Now, hopefully that resonated, gave you some things to think about. If you have questions, shoot them down below. If you disagree, you think it's completely wrong, please don't say anything and maybe just stop watching the videos. Some of these comments are hilarious. Don't waste your time because I'm not going to engage. It's my opinion, it's what I do. If you don't like it, you certainly don't have to watch. We're trying to be as positive as we can, and I'd appreciate it if everybody keeps it positive. That will only help. We are trying to do everything we can to bring more videos. It's difficult because time, it's really getting thin. The Ride Series is growing by leaps and bounds, and I think that's the best place for you to work on your turns if you want. Now, the 22 schedule is building out rapidly. We're gonna try to get coast to coast. We're gonna try to go to as many cities as we can. Now, we may not be able to get to your city. So if you go to therideseriesmtb.com or even shoot us a message, info@therideseriesmtb, we will give you an idea of the closest city to you. You can always come here to the mountain bike capital of the world, Bentonville, Arkansas, or if you're in one of those colder climates where they have that crazy white stuff on the ground, you can go out to Phoenix, San Diego. We're gonna be in St. George, Utah. We may even be in Florida. If we can get a permit sorted in Florida, we're gonna make that happen. So we'd love to see you at a Ride Series. We'll give you an amazing environment. We'll give you some instant feedback to help you get better, not only at turns, but pretty much everything else on your bike. So with that being said, follow along behind the scenes at The Rich Drew and at The Ride Series on Instagram. Questions, comments, like I said, drop them below. And yeah, stay positive out there. It's getting late in the year. Happy holidays to everybody. Enjoy yourselves, family, friends, all that good stuff. And peace out, dumpers.